absolutely no shame in asking for help. Yes, you may feel a little bit anxious or whatever at the beginning, but trust me, from a professional perspective, we've seen a lot of things. So, but there's nothing really that we're going to judge you for, nothing that we're going to make you feel small for. We're kind of that professional best friend. Reaching out is one of the most powerful things that you can do when you really do need it.
Welcome to the Naked Wellness Podcast. As a qualified nutritionist, I'm here to strip away the nonsense and get down to the bare essentials of nutrition and wellness. Join us as we debunk myths, chat with top-notch experts, and serve up practical tips that will leave you feeling empowered. Get ready to uncover the naked truth about living your healthiest life. Let's undress. Welcome back to the Naked Wellness Podcast. Today I have a special guest with me. I have Kelly Watkins. Kelly is a qualified cognitive behavioural therapist who works with individuals and helps them and couples to navigate their way through difficult times in their life or difficulties and challenges that they are experiencing so they can actually return to living the life that they once lived or that they are also or wanted to actually live as well, which is super cool and very inspiring. So welcome, Kelly, to the Naked Wellness Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Did you want to maybe start off with just telling us a little bit about you, your backstory, your own journey, if you've been on one?
Yeah, so I've been qualified for maybe like the last seven years or so. And I think for me, like when I was younger, I used to struggle with self-esteem. My eating habits weren't the greatest. I kind of struggled with that throughout my teens, probably up into my early 20s. And I did a lot of like self-work and trying to understand how I can improve my own self-esteem. But I suppose I was at university. I wanted to become a psychologist, but in forensic psychology, so it was a bit different to working on my self-esteem. And then got more interested in some of the therapy models like CBT, and that really stuck out for me. So even though it was driven by really wanting to support other people, I think one of the defining moments for me, when I was 18, I lost one of my best friends. They took their own life. And I think that really made me want to help people, but I just wasn't in that headspace, and kind of went through my own journey with therapy and kind of, as I said, with self-esteem. And then when I got to my mid-20s and I thought, okay, I can do something about this. I can learn really like evidence-based skills to help myself, but also help other people. So that's how my kind of professional and personal journey aligned, I suppose. So yeah, that was a little while ago now. And I think from that, learning the skills that I did on when I did my training, but I'm a real advocate. I'm always reading, trying to learn ways that I can support myself and then share that with my clients. Yoga's been a massive part of my journey. I started practicing yoga when I was probably about 18, when I went to uni. And that has kept me sane as well throughout the process. So and mindfulness, so even though I'm qualified, I think I'm quite holistic in how I look at things. I don't like to pigeonhole myself or the people that I work with into saying it's just CBT, it's only CBT, because like with yourself, I know that it's that holistic package that we need to look at, and finding your own kind of toolkit that works for you. Yeah, I'd say that's kind of an abridged version of my story.
Yeah, wow. And it's like so sorry for the loss and everything that you must have gone through in that time. Obviously, what you went through individually has created this like burning passion and desire to help so many other people through, which is so powerful because then it means that not only are you qualified in the area, but you also have an understanding for what other people are going through, which is so powerful. And it would mean that you would bring such a different approach to so many of the theories that you put into practice. Like you said, you have that holistic approach to it too, because you actually understand, which is so powerful. And so for some people who might be listening to this and they might not even know or have ever actually heard of cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT before, did you want to kind of explain to us what is it and how can it actually help people to navigate their way through those challenges that they're facing?
I always say it, then I forget that kind of when you you might not know what it is, so apologies. So with cognitive behavioural therapy, so it's normally shortened to CBT. So it looks at your thoughts, feelings, behaviours, and your physical sensations. So what's going on in your body, how they all interlink, because how we think affects how we feel, which can affect what our body is doing, and can affect what we're doing or also what we're not doing. So CBT is short term in the respect that it's not maybe like typical counselling where it would maybe over years or a longer period. I know the shorter term counselling, but CBT is really focused on a particular area, and it's evidence-based. So in the UK it's seen as like the gold standard for therapy, and I'm not quite sure in Australia if that's the case. But you would work on one particular problem, focusing on what's going on in the here and now. And it's not to say that you ignore the past, but there's less emphasis put on that. It's about kind of what happens in your past, how is that like turning up for you now, and what can we do about it? And it's quite active, that you would be set exercises to do between therapy sessions or homework sessions, whatever you like to call them, and then you practice out the skills, come back, say how they're doing, and you build on it in that way. And I think, and it depends on your CBT therapist, because there are models and protocols that you follow as you work through. But as I said, for me, I like bringing other things as well. So even though it's CBT, it maybe not the purest CBT, because I bring in other elements as well. But it can be useful for people with, as mentioned, low self-esteem, depression, any of the anxiety, so social anxiety, generalized anxiety, health anxiety. It's useful for post-traumatic stress disorder, substance misuse, personality difficulties. So it's a whole kind of plethora of things that it can be used for. And it can even be adapted for if someone hasn't got a diagnosis. You don't have to have that label to be able to benefit from it, that you can still use the skills. And as a professional, I'm not someone that likes to put people in boxes of diagnosis, even though it kind of, when you're talking about it, it makes sense to do so. But for some people it really works, saying, oh, I've got depression, and that's fine. But I think there's so much more to it than one word can actually explain. But yeah, I suppose that's it. It looks at your thoughts, feelings, behavior, and there's so many different techniques that people can use and find which ones work for them. And as I said, for myself with my toolbox, how I say to my clients is really the goal at the end of CBT is that you have your own therapeutic toolbox and you become your own therapist. So in 5-10 years time, if you get like a difficulty that comes up that either reminds you of something that you've been through or it's something new, chances are what you've got in your toolbox you can just adapt. It's just about looking at it and seeing where those transferable skills are, which is one of the things I absolutely love about it, that it's, even though it's short term, so people could do it for 6 sessions, 12 sessions, up to about 24, still in 5 or 10 years time you've got those skills that are there. So I think that's a real benefit of CBT for people.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And just even how the brain can be trained, just like any other muscle in our body, is so fascinating. I know for me, growing up, quite a young age, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and just how you're talking about having the labels on things. So for me, I found that having that label was probably not the best thing, because it then meant at a young age I attached myself to that, and I was like, well, this is me, this is how I act, so I can't then go and do X, Y, and Z. And it was quite limiting for me. And it wasn't until I found CBT as well and started working through that, and recognize that the brain gets to be trained like any other part of our body, and you can actually build that toolbox. I think that's just such a beautiful way that you're explaining it, of those different techniques that you individually get to have to be able to navigate your way through it. And that allowed me to shift into this place of, okay, well, I have anxiety and I might always have anxiety for the rest of my life, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop me from doing anything, and it doesn't define me as a person. And kind of releasing that attachment that I had to that label was a
Yeah.
huge part of that journey, because it's like I can navigate my way through it, and it's going to pop up and surprise me in the most random times, but
Yeah.
I have the toolbox there ready to go. And I think that, yeah, what you just explained aligns with that so much.
I think, yeah, it's so right, because you can, as I said, you can have that label and it's helpful for people to understand the traits, but then when it becomes limiting, it's like, oh
Yes.
no, I can't do that because I've got generalized anxiety disorder. It's like, well, you can, but it's about working out how you can.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, yeah, and it's just so individual. But I think how you explained it there, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And then I think because your toolbox then also allows you to communicate it really well to the people around you as well. And for an example, like my partner, he is just the most chilled out, like nothing phases him, whatever goes, goes, right? And like I'm the complete opposite. And so for me trying to explain that to him, he just sometimes doesn't quite get across. And so I think having those tools there to be like, this is what I'm feeling, but this is what I'm actually doing to work through it, is just such a nice way of communicating, to let people around you know that this situation that's playing a hand probably is going to impact me totally different to you. That's okay, but I do have my toolkit. Just be aware that I might like cry for 20 seconds and I'll be fine after.
But yeah, I think communication, and I think one of the things that maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, I think people being more open about
Mm-hmm.
their experiences, and I think that is so powerful. That I went to a wedding last week, and there was a bunch of psychologists really all together, and one of us is like, oh, I'm being like, I've got a sensory overload at the moment, I'm just going to go and stand outside, and the other person's like, yeah, I can really feel it on my skin, and then they're like, no, the sensory for me is in my head, and we're all standing there, we all just
Mm.
burst out laughing. But it's, I suppose, more so because we work in the field, but then seeing that translate to some of my friends who don't work in the field, and they're expressing, oh, I feel a little bit anxious about going out tonight because of X, Y, and Z. And it's okay, cool. Let's see what we can do. And I think that, and not owning it to let it define you, but being able to share your experience with other people to lessen those barriers that I think were there maybe 15 years ago or more.
Yeah, and it's removing that stigma as well around it, isn't it? Because for a period of time, it's like, well, if you were to vocalize that you felt anxious about going out, it was almost seen as being, and I do this like in quotation marks, like weak almost.
Yeah.
And it's removing that stigma of actually, it just makes you human, because we all experience it, and you don't have to experience it in silence anymore.
Yeah, and I'm so passionate about kind of removing that stigma. I will talk to anyone and everyone about mental health. And I suppose when you work in the field, there is that it's not a duty, but you feel that to just to normalize it. And the more you have those conversations, like my dad owns a shop, and because I've kind of normalized it so much around him, he's quite open now when customers come in, and he finds people coming into his shop and just sharing all this stuff with them. And because he's kind of held in information, and it's amazing, like these are men in their like maybe like 50s, 60s, and they're now being able to express that in a way that I
Wow.
think, again, previously I don't think that would have happened. But I think through so many people now, it's kind of a snowball, but a good snowball. In that more people are talking about it, recognizing it, talking about it, and again, that shift in society, it I would see is only for the good.
I
So there's
100% agree.
negatives, but I can't think of the negatives.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And so I find that many women do experience self doubt, or they can have quite a challenging relationship with themselves and their body. And so, how do you see that CBT could maybe help work through this, or how can people start to actually work through that self doubt that they experience?
I think with CBT, because you've got the cognitive and the behavioral side of things, I probably should have said that earlier. So you've got kind of what you're thinking and what you're doing are kind of the real key parts of it. Um, and I think with self-doubt, that comes into both areas. So it's
Mhm.
not just what you are doing, or probably more so what you aren't doing. It's that cognitive element of what's going on in your head as well. So I think in terms of helping people, it's figuring out what avenue in is best. So if you are someone where it's sometimes for I wouldn't say for all people, but for a lot of people, getting with the behaviors, going in that way can be easier than challenging the thought. So if we were going to say that the first step I would get people to look at, okay, so what is your self-doubt either stopping you from doing, limiting you in doing, um, and almost like making a list, and how much does that self-doubt impact that area? So maybe a 10 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. And in those situations, the reason why the self-doubt is showing up, because there'll be some sort of prediction. So it could be that I won't know what to say, or I'll fumble my words, or someone will laugh at me, people will shut me, whatever it is. And you look at the ones that you've scored like lowest on that rating, and you go and do those things, but you hold in mind what is that prediction, and you prove that prediction wrong. So
Mhm.
and writing it down, because then you're getting all this evidence that's proving your self-doubt wrong. um and if there's some times where you do go into a situation and you don't know what to say, it's like, okay, well, so what can then I learn from that? Yes, I didn't know what to say initially, but what happened after that, like that you was able to open up. So I think sometimes the self-doubt will cling on to that. Oh, in the first 5 minutes you stayed quiet, all right, so what? But after that you was able to talk. And because you're setting it up at like an experiment, you're looking for this evidence. So that would be, there are loads of skills that you could use, but I think that would be a really nice way into it. And then you move up the hierarchy, or the that ladder that you've created, and you would move up to the next part where you notice that you can go into that initial situation and that self-doubt is either drastically less or it's not there at all.
It's so interesting. And even when you're just talking, it kind of reminds me of, as humans, typically we tend to, with like you said, with the self-doubt, we obviously are predicting something to happen. And one idea that came to mind for me was when somebody's telling a story and they say like, oh, and I don't know, the cookie shop in X place, do you know where that is? And if you're standing there and you have no idea where that is, so often so many of us like, oh yeah, 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 like I know where that is. And that's like almost that doubt of, if I say no, I'm going to be seen as dumb or not knowing, or maybe they'll laugh at me, or all of these type of things. And it's those tiny little things that we do each day that I feel like can also accumulate and build up to have the evidence in the opposite way. And so it makes complete sense as to why you're saying we have to rebuild evidence to prove all of that wrong. And that evidence is obviously going to be so much stronger. And in that example, you could be like, no, I have no idea where that is. Guaranteed the person telling the story would then actually just explain it and then move on with the story. Nothing bad would ever come from it. But our minds obviously like to create some very drastic stories sometimes.
Yeah. And so with that, you'd have the suppose the experiment that you'd be doing is, when you don't know the answer, say to someone you don't know the answer, rather than trying to fill the air. Um, and then again, as you said, that you're going to start to challenge that those predictions are, oh, they're going to laugh at me if I say I don't know where the cookie shop is, or they're going to kind of just walk away and like kind of huff at me. And then when you're doing that and someone comes up, I don't know how many people ask where the cookie shop is, but when someone comes up and asks you, you say, oh no, sorry, I don't know where it is. And then they're just like, oh, okay, thanks, have a good day. And it's like, ah, okay. And that's why I said about like writing it down, whether that is on your phone or whether that is on a piece of paper. And then when that self-doubt starts to creep up, you can read all of this evidence that disproves it. And that's why I probably annoy my clients. I'm like, please write it down, so you've got it there. You're going to make it more powerful for yourself. And that's why I think recording things like in that way, whether you're in therapy or if you're just doing work on yourself, it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I guess as well, you can have so many positives that have happened, and all it takes is one negative, and then you hyper
Exactly.
focus on that. So if you haven't written any of the positives down, all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like your brain is now only fixated on the one thing that didn't quite go to plan.
exactly. Like you could have like the really loads of things like wins throughout your day, and then one thing happens, and then it's like, right, that's it, my day's over, my day's ruined. And then it's like, but actually I've done all of these other things. Why has that got so much weight on it that that just
Mm.
wipes out the rest of my day?
Yes, 100%. And so when it comes to, I guess, our relationship with ourselves and our bodies specifically, and body image, self confidence, because I feel like this is such a huge topic, we can have so many negative thoughts towards ourselves. And a lot of this, I believe, does come from life experiences that we've had, which have created these core beliefs. And those life experiences could be our parents, coaches, teachers, influential people in our lives, or it could be drastic diets that we've tried to go on, just social media in general. But obviously, we get to a point for a lot of us as women where our brains have been almost like wired in a way, or they like we've learnt these beliefs of how we should look, how we should be, to not like ourselves, because when we look at the $1 billion industry of the diet industry, it prides on our self, like lack of self-confidence and our vulnerabilities and insecurities, and makes us feel not worthy. How can we, like, that is such a tough thing to then actually try and navigate your way through, and overcoming those negative thought patterns that we do go through. Is it a similar sort of journey, or are there other techniques that you could put in place to work through this?
Yeah, there's loads of different ways. Can I share two? Because I think they'd be
Yeah,
really
let's go for it.
so the first one, that when you get that negative narrative in your head, when you catch yourself, just ask yourself, like, would I speak to someone who I deeply care about in that way, whether it's a best friend, a partner, an animal, a child, whatever it is. And the answer is going to be no.
Mm.
And then ask yourself, okay, so what would I say instead? You would say X, Y, and Z. And then replace that negative thought with what you'd say to someone that you care deeply about. And you continue to do that every time that negative narrative shows up, whether it's 10 times a day, 100 times a day, 2 times a day, whatever it is. And exactly as you said with the rewiring, you're doing that and you're going to be challenging yourself cognitively. And you may not believe it at the start, and that's completely fine. But the more you do it, you're creating new neural pathways with this information that is going to start to, how I always see it is like a kind of walking through like a meadow or something, and you've got the grass really tall. And that when you're trying to do something new, it's really hard to walk through the meadow because the grass is tall.
Mm.
But the more you do it, so the more you flip it to the what you'd say to your best friend or whatever, that pathway is going to be easier for you to walk through. So it's about repeating that and doing that. So that's the first technique that you can do anywhere as well. The second technique you need a mirror for. So within that, it's about looking at yourself. And for some people that I work with, it can be really difficult to maybe look at yourself in like a full mirror, so kind of your whole body. So maybe looking just at your head. And for some people, it may be they can't look face on, they have to go sideways, whatever works. But naming one thing or more thing that you either accept, you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, but you accept, or if you feel comfortable to saying something that you like, then great. And if that is even, so it could be that I accept the length of my hair, or I like the color of my eyes, or I like this freckle that I've got right here, whatever it could be. And you can do it that way, and then you start to say more and more things, or you can say things like what you're thankful for your body for. So I'm thankful to have these eyes so I can see my dog's face or my child's
Mm.
face or my partner's face. So whichever kind of avenue, but it's just about getting you to look at yourself and getting you to say things that are more either neutral or positive language rather than negative. And the reason why I say neutral or positive, because at the beginning it may not feel comfortable to do the positive, like, oh my God, I love my face, I look incredible. Obviously that's what we're aiming for. But to start off with, and it's those
Yeah.
pathways. every day is going to be different. That like times of the month that we may be more bloated or we may have changes in our body, that kind of being like, I'm thankful for my body showing me that it's going through these changes and how powerful my body is, rather than being like, oh, I look so bloated, I look terrible. So, and that's why kind of having that either accept or like or love, or that thankfulness, gratefulness, whatever word works for you. So yeah, sorry it's long-winded, but there'd be my two
Mm.
areas I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. I think like the rewiring and the repetition of just doing that again and again is so powerful, because so many people, I guess, when they start this journey, they might not even believe that they can get to that point where they do have that acceptance. It just might seem so far away. And so, like, as you touch on, you got to keep putting in the reps. You might not believe it to start with, but as you keep showing up, you're literally rewiring and wearing in that path. And then that body neutral place that we can get to, I think, is also really important, because I feel like in especially on social media as well, there's this big movement towards body positivity, self-love,
Yeah.
but I also feel like there is this phase that we're going through where people do promote self-love, and that's like the perfect place to get to, of that, oh my god, I love every part of me, I'm just obsessed type of thing. And at the end of the day, you might never actually wholeheartedly love every single part of your body, and it's actually okay to be that, but you can get to that point where you still accept every part of your body. And in this journey of like transitioning from negative to neutral to positive, like that neutral period, I still remember when I went through that, it feels really strange and quite uncomfortable, because you're like, I'm not thinking about it negatively anymore, but I also don't have really any positive thoughts. It just feels a little bit like I have no thoughts towards, like, it just is what it is. And
Yeah.
it's such an interesting phase to go through. But I guess one of like the sayings that stuck out to me in that part of my journey was, the woman who has everything always wants more, and the woman who doesn't have anything only ever wants one thing. And it was like, so if a woman like who has a capable body like myself, who is able to exercise, able to do all the things that I want to do, was forever like always striving to be a smaller size or change this part of my body or change that, yet I never took the moment just to appreciate like the small things that you said, like your eyes being able to see. And so the woman who, let's say, doesn't have two legs to walk from A to B, probably wouldn't even care what the legs look like, would just actually want legs so that she could do that and take that action. And I just thought that was so powerful, because our bodies do show up for us every single day and allow us to do all of the things that we do. And so often we almost take that for granted, or we don't stop and have that moment of, okay, well, this respect almost has to go two ways, and I can get to that point where I see myself in that light of acceptance.
Yeah, it is so true. And I think even just being thankful for what our internal organs are doing, that we can't see what they're doing, but they're doing a hell of a lot inside of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's always, when I speak to people when we're talking about this sort of thing, it's always quite alien to them, because they're kind of putting themselves down, kind of, but it's just the external. I'm like, okay, well, what about your personality? What about what's going on inside of you? Like, what about your heart, as in the love that you show, but also what actually your physical heart is doing? And that sort of shift. And I used to do workshops before COVID, and just these like, you can see the like the cogs going around in people's heads, and it was just, yeah, fascinating to see. And then one thing I always do, and I do it with my friends, probably much to their annoyance, like if someone gives someone a compliment, like women are so like, say, oh, I really
Oh.
like your top, like, oh, it's really old, like I've had this for years, I
Mm.
think I ironed it today. And just saying thank you, like that was, I remember when I did it years ago. It was an experiment on myself, because I noticed when people, I'd just back the compliments
Straight
away.
deflect.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, this is really old, or I haven't washed my hair today, or da. And then someone commented, it's like, why do you, when I compliment you, why do you always do that? And it was just someone that I worked with, and I was like, oh, I never really paid that much attention. And then
Mm.
from that point on, I've been annoying probably people ever since by getting people to accept compliments.
Yeah, because it's true, you do get to accept them. Like, you don't have to deflect every compliment that comes away. I guarantee the first time that you actually accept a compliment, and you're like, oh, thank you feel so awkward and so uncomfortable.
So if you kind of sitting there like, thank you, and then like have to hold your mouth shut, like, so you don't say anything more.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's such a like, even something so small like that is such a powerful technique of you actually owning your power as well, not like giving that away to somebody else, which is so cool.
Yeah. And it's something anyone that you can start that at any point of your journey, and you can, yeah, you don't need anything special to be able to start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big one like that, which I feel so many people do, and I went through a phase of doing, is apologizing for everything.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, sorry, I said that, or sorry, I did that, or sorry, I'm so late, like, or whatever it is. And I had a friend that pulled me up on that. She was like, you have to stop apologizing. Like, you were 2 minutes late. You don't apologize for getting here 2 minutes late. You say like, thank you for your patience, or just like such simple changes in the wording. And I was like, like, so now like I have to pull myself up on, but you're right. Once you become aware of it yourself, you also become aware of so many other people doing it too.
Yeah, the sorry one. I think the British culture, we're kind of renowned for saying sorry for everything. And I read, it's so interesting you say that. It was a post the other day, and it was what you could replace instead of saying sorry, sorry, sorry. Like
Ah,
you can, I'll try and find it and send it to you. It was so good. It was like,
yes.
yeah, instead of saying sorry, I'm late, like thank you for waiting for me. Instead of saying like sorry, I don't understand, saying, oh, can you explain X, Y, and Z to me? And it was really, really good. I'll try and find it. It was really good.
Yeah, no, that does sounds amazing. And then the other one that popped into my mind then as well was when we say just, like if you're typing out an email and you say like, I am just wanting to confirm something, and just even that change of terminology of no, you're not just wanting, you are wanting. You have to step into that authority and that power of I'm actually wanting to know this information, or I'm wanting to get you to write the emails. And I am somebody who always puts that just in all of my things to like soften it. I'm like, how interesting, how much power that we could have do we give back to other people to be almost like extra liked or accepted. I guess maybe that comes down to people pleasing somewhere or tendencies like that as well.
Yeah, that I've never heard that before, and I'm just literally rolling through my email. Like, I'm just wondering, instead of like, can you confirm? And there was something, probably can, I don't want to go off on a massive tangent, but it's something to do with like the male and feminine kind of the languages, and that kind of what you see kind of people that maybe identify as a female, and kind of the language that they
Mm-hmm.
choose versus people that identify as a male. And I think that's really interesting in kind of seeing the differences. And like as you said, with the I'm just wondering rather than can you confirm.
Yes.
um yeah, that's quite interesting.
No, that is super interesting. And on that as well, I know that there's so many studies that are also done of even just women in the workforce and how they are a lot more accepting, or, let's say they're like, okay, this is your new pay rise. As women, typically like, oh, okay, like that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. But if you were to give it to a male who is very much in his masculine, he might be like, oh, that's not right. Like, I think I actually deserve X extra for my pay rise. And just how, yeah, a lot of women do typically tend to end up having a bit more of the people pleasing. We maybe have a little bit more of an internal fear of not being accepted or having that self doubt or things that come up through that. And how, and I mean, this is also going into like the masculine and feminine energy, but how you can get to that point where you do have a balance of both as being a woman, and you actually can step into that powerful woman that you get to be.
Yeah, so I just want to share like a real live example. I had a meeting yesterday, and it was with a man, and it was about we are talking about fees for me doing this piece of work. And I said my fee, my hourly fee, which is the same for everyone. And then they said, oh no, that's kind of more than what we expected. And in my head, I was like, okay, well, I'll just drop it. I'll just drop it. And then I just kept it. And I was like, okay. And then I felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I'm not dropping it. But that's what other people pay. That's what I've been paid for the last couple, not like obviously in increments, but that's my fee.
Yeah.
That's and then he was just staring at me like, okay, well that's more. And I was like,
Yeah, it is.
okay. Like, and then I was like, do I need to explain my experience? Like, no, he knows my experience. I don't need to try and justify it. Like, you've
Yeah.
come to me, you know what I'm worth. But yeah, it was a real interesting of that. I had like a massive internal thing of, oh, I should drop it, or I should explain more why I'm worth that amount. And then we said, okay, we'll keep in touch. And then that was the end of the call. But it was, yeah, it was really, really interesting thinking about it like that.
So interesting. And how powerful you actually stand your ground, because at the end of the day, you know your worth, you know what you charge. And even if you were to drop it for him, then that's not fair on all the amazing clients that you have that are actually
Exactly.
paying, because they know and they're willing to pay what you're
Yeah.
worth as well.
Mm.
And yeah, I just think that there's so many examples like that where it's the internal battle and the voices are like there, and you to push past that can be so challenging. But again, I guess it also goes back to that evidence piece that you're talking about earlier. Like, now you also have evidence that you can stand your ground, and even though it's uncomfortable in the time, what it leads to after is so empowering.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's that evidence, and also for something that really helped me in that moment, I've got a colleague kind of slash friend who is really stands her ground. Like when it comes to her worth in terms of financial, she won't take any rubbish. That will be her thing. And I almost kind of envisage her in my head that if I would have had a conversation with her and told her that I would have lowered it, that like what would she, and almost kind of, and I love that, like sometimes when we don't feel that strength, thinking about someone that we know, even if it's personal or not, that has that strength, that quality that we require, and almost embodying them. And it's not to say that we're not good enough in our own self, but to kind of develop that skill sometimes when we can see it in other people and hone that. I think that can be a really great way of doing it as well.
100%. Literally just like owning your power. And I'm such a strong believer in whatever you entertain, you attract. And so let's take your example from the other day. If you had have entertained that type of energy and behavior for him to want you to obviously lower the price right then and there, and you'd done it, then you're literally opening the door to so many other clients to come your way and ask for the price to be lowered too, because that's the type of energy that you're entertaining. Whereas like you stood your ground, I'm like, absolutely not. And so now the energy that you're putting out there, I'm like, what you're entertaining is that you know your worth, and the clients that come into your world actually respect that, and
Mm.
also wholeheartedly know your worth.
Yeah, and as I said, it wasn't even to do with the fact that he was a man. It was just interesting, that dynamic, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't to do with that. Um, it was for a company, so it wasn't
Yeah.
that it was an individual that's telling me they couldn't afford it. That's completely
Mm.
different. But it was a company that I know has got like millions.
Yeah.
And it was still that I'm like, come on now, like if someone is like coming to me and they're saying that they're saving, they're putting money out of their pay packet to ensure that they've got that
Mm-hmm.
time for that, and yet someone with millions that, or company with millions, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, absolutely. No, I love that. I think it's so powerful. And so I guess if somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, I kind of want to start this journey because I feel like there's more that I can unpack, or I am currently experiencing the body image issues or anxiety, depression, whatever it is, where do they start? Like, what's that first starting point?
So I think do you mean in terms of like professionally, or what would?
Somebody wanting, like, if they're going through difficulties or challenges in their life, yeah, maybe the same point is to reach out, or is there other places they can start to?
Yeah, yeah, sorry. So I think that when someone's starting their journey, I think kind of reading, whether that is physically reading or audiobooks, and kind of finding the things that speak to you. And I think that would be your initial step. And as we spoke at the beginning, thinking holistically, like trying
Mm.
out new things, whether that is yoga, whether that is kind of meditation, whether that is um being more in tune with nutrition, like whatever it is, that there's going to be those kind of steps. But I think in terms of the journey for your mental wellness, as well as doing the behavioral changes, I think reading, um finding out what it is that you actually feel that you would like support with, um maybe gathering some information, and sometimes that can be enough that you pick up a couple of skills that really work for you. But then with the professional side of things, I think then it could be about finding a professional that would be beneficial for you. um there's actually there's it's an Australian company actually, and they do loads of self-help books, and they're for free. um can I say what it is, or yeah?
Yeah.
It's CCI, so it's the Centre for Clinical something. It's a government website, and they've got these loads of self-help books, and you go through like each of them. So I get people to go through them, and I think it's one of the best websites I've ever seen. It's all free, and it literally breaks it down into different areas. So and that is underpinned by CBT. So that's kind of a good space to go through. But then, as I said, if that isn't quite hitting the points that you want, then I think, yeah, going professionally, I think it will be the next step. And again, it's different in which country you're in, but making sure that you find a suitably qualified
Mm.
professional is something that I feel really passionate about, because I think especially on the internet, social media, sometimes it's not really clear who's properly qualified and who isn't.
Yeah.
So I think asking for credentials, knowing what credentials someone needs to practice,
Mhm.
and yeah, kind of making sure that you get the right person in terms of their professional qualifications, and then obviously the right person in terms of the connect with them would come later.
Yeah, absolutely. And when reaching out for that help, I think it's so important that people understand that they don't have to go through these struggles on their own. Like there are people who are willing to help you and guide you through this, and you don't have to do it in silence. And there's nothing wrong and there's no harm. In fact, I would say it's actually a real big strength to reach out for that help and to get somebody to guide you through this journey,
Mhm.
which is so, so important.
Definitely, as I said, that you can get some really good value out of the reading, and kind of whether it's those
Yeah.
work I mentioned, but sometimes it comes a point that you just want that, either where it's a top up or it's kind of full treatment. That sometimes I get people that come to me that have done so much work on themselves, and it's like, I know all of this, but I can't actually apply it to me. So we're not really working together for that long, maybe even like 3 or 4 sessions, and that just kind of pulls everything together. And as you said, there is absolutely no shame in asking for help. That we all need help in different ways, and it's just reaching out. That yes, you may feel a little bit anxious or whatever at the beginning, but trust me, from a professional perspective, we've seen a lot of things, so
Yes.
nothing really shocks us. I always get people saying, oh, I don't know if you've heard this before, I feel a bit funny saying it, and as soon as they tell me, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like, we can work on but I think that you see their body like being like, oh, I don't want to say it, and then I'm just sitting there like, yeah, come on, let's go for it. And
Yeah.
that's quite good as well. So yeah, there's nothing. There's probably things that we haven't heard, but there's nothing really that we're going to judge you for.
Mm-mm.
Nothing that we're going to make you feel small for. We're kind of that professional best friend, in kind of in that sense. But yeah, I think reaching out is one of the most powerful things that you can do when you really do need it.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is one of the top misconceptions that you do hear about mental health?
That people are immune from it.
Mm.
I'd probably say that just because I'm X, Y, and Z, oh, I can't experience it, or yeah, I think that I don't know if it's like generational, but I think that's not fair to say. I was gonna say, like, different generations kind of see mental health in a different way, and
Mhm.
but I think that anyone can experience mental health. It doesn't mean that you're weak, as you said. It doesn't mean
Mm.
you have got anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that that people are going to judge you. That there's nothing like that. But you could be walking down the road and you could walk past 10 people, and everyone's going, like, there's that quote, isn't it? Everyone's going through things that you can't see, or struggles that you can't see. Um and I think that people just assume that they're the only one, or that, yeah, that other people aren't going through it, or then, or the, as I said, the opposite of, oh, they're immune from it. It's not that everyone's got their own things going on. And you don't have to tell everyone about everything that's going on for you by any means, but just, I think people either thinking that they're alone going through it, or they're immune from it. I know they're the two polar opposites, but I'd say they're the kind of the two, the common misconceptions, I would say.
Yeah, there's a word, Sondernoun, and it's the realization that everyone actually is living their own life that we have no idea about. Like everybody's got their own bubble, and I guess at the end of the day, we have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. And you're right, like you could
Mm.
walk down the street and somebody could be putting on a brave face, but again, like you don't like they live in their own life and going through their own battles at that point.
What was that word again? I'm gonna write that
Sondenam. Yeah. Write that down. I remember the day
down.
that I learned it, I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting. And it was so funny because I was driving the car and I was with my boyfriend and he has like these words of the day that pop up. And I was just talking about how it was so interesting because all the houses were driving past, like some had lights on and some didn't. And I was just saying how it's so interesting when you just like take a moment to take a step back and you're like, everybody's living their own life. Like some people are in their house having dinner right now. Some people are out partying. Like, and we have no idea who these people are. We have no idea what their story is. We have no idea like what their financial position is or anything like that. And he was like, "Oh, that was the word of the day today, like Sundernown." And I was like, "That is so random, but so cool."
I
And
love
it's
it.
like, yeah, it's crazy. It's just we're all individuals just doing our own thing.
It's gonna be my new word. I'm gonna have to look at this today. That's really good. But it's so true. I think even like with I'm not always the best at messaging people back because I kind of get in my own bubble. And then I always kind of feel the need to apologize for people. But
Yeah.
exactly as you said, we're all in our own bubble. We're all doing, doesn't mean that we're a bad friend or a bad like wife or girlfriend, like sister, daughter,
Hmm.
whatever. That but it's about yeah, kind of we obviously we needed that time to not look at our phone or to not respond to that email, and that's okay. But yeah, that's yeah, I love that word.
Yes, it's so good. Now I have some quick fire questions for you. Ready for these, Kelly?
Okay.
What is one thing that you must do every morning to set your day up
Oh, one thing that I do or that other people do.
that you do?
Oh, I have like I put salt in my water the night before and
Ah,
I drink that in the morning.
interesting. Love it. Good start to the
Yeah,
day.
yeah, I don't know. Just to get apparently to do something to do with electrolytes and
Oh
something my
yeah.
brother
Oh yeah.
told me to do it. So I was like, okay, I don't know, but if that was if that's not medically proven, then then I do some like breathing or some stretching.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. And what is one thing that everyone can do every day just to improve their life?
Notice the things that they're grateful for.
Yeah, I love it. What would you say your favorite quote is and why?
This too shall pass.
Oh,
Pretty much what it says on the tin. That kind of that when you're going through something, I sometimes I say it like Gandalf, like instead of you shall not pass, like this too shall pass, but I say it like that, because I feel like it just adds extra dramatics. Um, but I think that just when you're going through that difficult time, that it's all it will pass, so it will be fine.
mm-hmm. Yeah, the storm always passes. I love it. It's so true. Like no matter how tough it feels right now, it's like you will come out the other side. Now,
Yeah.
one question that I love to ask all my podcast guests is in the distant future, when you are looking back on your life, what do you actually feel will be your biggest achievement or one thing that you'll be most proud of? And this could be something that you've already done, or it could also be something that you're hoping to do in the future.
I'll go with what my gut said straight away.
Yeah.
So I'm studying my like a doctorate at the moment, so I'll be like Dr. Watkins
Oh
in
my
hopefully a
God.
couple of years. And I think I was never the smartest at school. I yeah, even at uni I was never top of the class, and I think that for me getting that title is yeah, I feel like it's going to be just yeah, going to make me feel really proud. I got diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 29. And so I was kind of an uphill struggle that I didn't know I was on. So I think that, and because it like, yeah, I think professionally that's going to be my biggest thing and kind of seeing how proud it makes people around me as well. Like
Mhm.
seeing my family's reaction to that is really quite nice.
Oh,
So
I
I
love
think
it. That's so powerful. Yeah. And even just like the impact and the change that you're having on so many people, and then for you to be able to do that for yourself as well is so beautiful.
yeah, I think my cheesy answer would be kind of all the people that I've helped, and obviously that is really, but I think personally for me that would be what mine is.
100%. I love that. And did you want to tell the audience what you have coming up, if anything exciting for them, and where the listeners can actually go to find you?
Yeah, I think for me, I just kind of posting regularly. I will have some workshops coming up in the near future, but I don't have any dates set as yet. But on Instagram, I'm Kelly dot the dot CBT. Psychologist. And that's mainly where you can find all my links to my like TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. So yeah, that would be the main place. I'd say the one-stop shop. And my website's www.kellywatkins.co.uk.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll put those direct links in the show notes so people can go over and check it out. But yeah, you post obviously quite regularly and lots of interesting and engaging posts. So if people want more information about anything and everything that we've touched on, definitely the place to go to check out.
Cool.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything that you have with us today. I know that so many people will be walking away having taken some little golden nuggets and feeling quite inspired probably to start maybe their own journey or work through some things that they have been wanting to work through for a long period of time. So thank you, Kelly. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
What an amazing episode today with Kelly. I would love to hear what your key takeaway is from today's episode, or if you currently know somebody who is struggling with their mental health, to share this episode with them. I always love connecting with every single one of you. So just head over to my Instagram, which is KJ Wellness with 3 S's, and send me a direct message or a DM. I will chat with you in the next episode very soon. And until then, you take care. Bye.